Well, hi, it's Dave from Driving Venture, and welcome back to Costco Drives, episode 2. Now, in today's episode, the second episode of this series, I'm hoping to keep going on the channel. We're going to have answers to some viewer questions, some questions on cars, and also importantly questions on watches, so I'm looking forward to answering some of those. Then we're going to get into a bit of a dive on this watch I'm wearing today. This is the Rolex Sea Dweller 4000, reference 16600. So we're going to get into a bit of a dive on this watch. Then I'm going to cover off some of my predictions, or maybe the one prediction I've got for Rolex for 2021, a watch to look out for that I think will be arriving and will be revealed in 2021 for Rolex. Then I'm going to talk about the video that I've watched in the last 7 days that I really like. Encourage you to watch that one. And then reflections on the Cayman Porsche GTS 4 litre, that flat 6 engine. It did surprise me, that car. That car is extremely capable. In that Python green, yeah, it's got me thinking about Python green, let me say. And then we'll wrap it up with a little bit about what's coming up on the channel. What have I got lined up? What cars am I hoping to be filming ahead? So, viewers' questions. Well, MN Car Spotter got in touch with me and he asked a question: Dave, what's your favourite generation of Porsche 911? That's a really good question because I like them all actually. But if I was picking a favourite one, money was no object, obviously that's a consideration, I'd have to go with the 993. I think the 993 generation Porsche is probably one of the most beautiful shaped 911s ever graced the road. I've been fortunate enough to drive a 911 993 Turbo, my friend Paul's 993S wide body, just sensational. Vesuvius, I think it's purple, yeah, lovely car. And he's having some TLC done to that car before we get into the touring season next spring. So that's my favourite generation of 911. And another question here comes from Matt Fox, and Matt wants to know what's my favourite go-to Rolex that I have. Well, I mentioned in the first video series, episode 1, that I do like the Sea Dwellers, wearing one today, and I find myself, in terms of a daily watch, gravitating to Sea Dwellers probably more than any other line. So I can't really say one in particular, but probably I do like the Sea Dweller line, and it is a watch I find on my wrist more often than not. And as a little watch tip, if people have got a few watches, I used to change a watch every single day. I was like, I'll get this watch, and then as the collection grew and I'd start putting them in the bank and safety deposit boxes, it got to a stage where an every day wasn't really working. So what I do now is I have a watch for a while and I wear it for a bit. I can sometimes wear a watch for a week and a half. It just gets you kind of like settles in on the wrist really, and then you're enjoying it more and more. It's difficult to take it off. So I find myself wearing some watches longer than others, and the Sea Dweller is certainly a watch that I do that with. Okay, and the next question comes from Toby, and Toby wants to know, what do I think of the new Oyster Perpetual 41mm with all those crazy colours? Well, I personally, if it's not other than the Daytona, I'm really into my date in mechanism in the watch. So if it's a watch that doesn't have a date mechanism, I don't tend to consider it too much, to be honest. But I do think it's an interesting development. I think they will sell well, obviously in steel, which is, makes it again very difficult to get hold of. So I think that's it really. I think they are very good looking. They're very Moorish. I think they could be considered a bit Marmite. You know, some people are gonna really love it, some aren't. I don't know what's emerging as the best colour and the hardest colour to get, but I watched one YouTuber guy, he does watches, Paul Thorpe, and he was saying he thinks if you can get a full set from one dealer, that'd be great. Obviously, that's something I'm going to be doing, but anyway, that's we've got the means. But I think, yeah, I think they'll be quite sought after. Okay, predictions. Sorry if I'm not doing this in order because I'm driving. I will stop and I'll do the deep dive on this watch because there's a few things I want to say about it. So I need to get off my wrist so you can get an idea of what it's about. So that's coming up in today's video. So predictions for Rolex for 2021. Now, as we know, Rolex have decided that they're no longer going to support Baselworld. So that basically means once you lose one of your main brands like that, I think Baselworld's finished. I think it's finished. So they're going to support their own thing and they're going to do it in Geneva, which is probably sensible. It costs a lot of money, you know, to put these shows on. In fact, we can afford it. It's a lot of money though. So I think what you're going to see from Rolex, this is just my only prediction really for 2021. In 1971, Rolex launched the Explorer 2. And the Explorer 2 watch, got a van here, it's trying to go through this underpass bridge and it wouldn't have got through. So in 1971, they launched the Explorer 2. And I think 50 years later, in 2021, I think you're going to see a Rolex Explorer 2 anniversary edition. I think it's bang on going to happen. Of course, I could have egg on my face, I could get it wrong, but I do think you're going to see an Explorer 2 in 2021, 50 years. Let's look at the form of Rolex. Rolex Green Submariner, 50 years. 50 years with the Sea Dweller, 50 years with the Platinum Daytona. So, okay, I think you're beginning to catch my drift. I think you're going to see a Rolex Explorer 2 join the lineup next year. So that's a prediction for 2021. Okay, because I haven't got to where I want to wait and stop and go over this watch, let's talk about my video of the week. Now, what have I been watching? Well, apart from a few watch channels that I watch, I've been watching Top Gear, one of my, my favourite channels, and we've had the Top Gear Awards, and sorry to bring up Chris Harris again, but yes, he's back, being talked about on the channel again, and Top Gear have awarded the 911 Turbo S 992 as their performance car of the year, and Chris Harris is basically all over that car. Had the opportunity to drive it round Anglesey racetrack. He's also driven it on the road too, and I have yet to see a bad review on the Porsche Turbo S car that's been released. I've yet to see a bad one. I think it's an astonishing car. I think it really steps it up. Its handling is second to none. So I was fortunate enough on the Supercar Driver GT Drive, even though it's not technically a GT Porsche, I was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time following and being followed by at Supercar Nigel's Crayon Turbo S, but it didn't have the roof, the cabriolet, just absolutely lovely car. So this is where we're going to stop to do the chat on the Sea Dweller. If I can find a parking space. Yeah, it's not pretty clear back here. Okay. Let's get parked up here now. This car's great, surround sound, video, perfect. Right. I think I'll leave the engine running. Okay, so this is the Rolex Sea Dweller 4000. Now, this watch has a very interesting story to it. I actually got this watch when I thought they were finished. In 2008, Rolex released the Deep Sea, and this watch was discontinued. The factory had stopped production, it was all over. It was never a big selling watch, this. They were a watch that could have been in the window a year, 2 years, I'm led to believe. And what happened was, was such demand for the Sea Dweller, this one, that Rolex had never done it before. They did a special batch of watches on a V for Victor serial, and they launched those watches globally to all the countries, and they went out to the stores, and I was very fortunate enough to be able to get one. So a V serial Sea Dweller, there's not many, because after that, of course, it was all over. So the Sea Dweller doesn't have a bubble on the glass, and that's what I like about it. It's very clean look. Now as my eyes have deteriorated, I now actually do appreciate a bubble because it helps me to see what day of the week it is. But the flat glass, and the other key distinction over a Submariner, apart from the fact that the case is a little bit wider, as you've got that thing on the back there, the helium escape valve. Now the Sea Dweller came along in the 70s. It was a 1665 model reference when it came out, and it had red writing on the dial, and those watches are very sought after. I mean, really sought after. Some have got double red, and there's a single red, and then a little bit later on, the 1665 went all white. The Great White was like an all white dial, and then we moved into what's referred to as a transitional Sea Dweller, which is the 16660, and they can have the old style dials, the old style plots in there, and then they progressed into the tritium, and then the luminova, then the superluminova dials, and this is obviously superluminova because it's one of the later ones. And the 16660, that transitioned into the 16600 about 1989, and the 16660s are quite sought after as well. The case is a bit thicker than the Submariner, and it kind of sets it apart from a Submariner. You will see quite a few people wearing Submariners. You don't see as many people wearing a Sea Dweller, and that's one of the reasons I like it. What's unique about this particular Rolex is it has an extension bracelet which you can open up at the back, so that helps to go over like a wetsuit. And this watch is really designed for saturation divers, those people that live in kind of diving bells on the ocean for weeks at a time. And when they were coming up out of those decompression depths, then helium would get into the watch. So what they did was they released, they patented a helium escape valve, and very unique to watches back in them days. So that's why you've got the helium escape valve in there in the side of the watch. The other thing, although a Submariner does have the extension link in the back, the Sea Dweller came with a little kind of case, and if I can just reach into my pocket here, in that case it came with one of these, which is a Rolex screwdriver. And then what you would do is, let's do the side actually, you'd use that to, sorry, I actually had the right side first off. Yeah, so that's your screwdriver there. And then what you would do is you would use that to undo this, it's like a plastic screw. You can see that on the watch there. And then you'd put a bigger one of these in, which is the extension bit there. So that's what makes, again, the Sea Dweller a little bit unique. It had a bigger extension link that you could stick into it. Not that I've ever done it, but I do use this to adjust my watches occasionally. I've used it to take links out and put links in. And on the back of the Sea Dweller, which is, again, other than the Milgauss, is the only Rolex that does this, you do get some writing on the back of the case. So you get like helium escape valve. You can see that there on the film. So that's something which, again, is unique to the Rolex Sea Dweller. So it's an absolutely fabulous watch. I've loved having it. It's very understated. It comes in my favourite colour scheme, the black and the steel colour. Black dial, white plots, just knockout watch. And it does wear a little bit taller on the wrist because you've got the bigger case at the back for the watch. But that's really to help to withstand the extra pressure. It's 4,000 feet, whereas the Submariner is only 1,000 feet. So as you can see, it has to be a bit beefed up to be able to do that. And so I've loved this watch ever since I got it, and I never thought I'd get one, but there we go. Now, what happened with the Rolex Sea Dweller is that it went into the deep sea, and the deep sea came along in 2008. This is when this watch was basically consigned to history books. But the demand, the V serial, they put a batch of watches out looking to get one of these. And then the deep sea was a bit Marmite. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. I was really against it. I saw it in Hong Kong. I thought, good grief, that's enormous. But as I wore it more and more and tried it on, I eventually came to the realisation that I actually really liked it, so I bought one. But Rolex had something of a problem then, because they didn't have anything in the middle. You had like your Submariner, then it went right up to this really chunky Sea Dweller deep sea thing, and there was nothing in the middle. So they reintroduced in 2014, they reintroduced a Sea Dweller, which is similar to Porsche to this. It was a 40mm case, again flat glass, and it kind of sat in the middle. And that watch, they only had that watch in production for about 2.5 years, 2014, 2017, and then it went. Of course, then they brought out the 126600, and that was the anniversary edition, 43mm, and that watch with the red writing took you back to the red writing of the original double red and red Sea Dwellers from the 70s. So very popular, but the bubble on the glass is just doesn't do it for me, unfortunately. So 43mm nice. It does just wear bigger. I know a few people who have them. They are nice. Maybe I will review that watch, get it in my hands at some point in the future. So there we go. That's a little bit about the Sea Dweller. I will now carry on my journey, but you should appreciate I couldn't get it off my wrist and kind of show you a little bit about the watch whilst I was driving. Speaking of looking at Waze and what the hell's going on there. But yeah, look out for that Explorer 2. I do think that's a watch which is coming up for Rolex. If the form book's anything to go by, you can expect it to be coming along. Now, I do have an Explorer 2, got that in a white dial, the Polar, which I do prefer. I haven't pulled the trigger on the 42mm reference one. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe I'll get one of them eventually. All these things in the mix gets in the way of my cars. Got a passion for both, really. Got a passion for both, but there we go. So let's talk a little bit about the Cayman GTS 4-litre. A bit more about that car. I hope you watched that video. Obviously, it's just gone out there on Sunday. I mean, it did stagger me. £10,000 cheaper than £10,000 cheaper than a GT4. You know, the convertible 718 Boxster format, again £10,000 cheaper than the Spider, which are very hard to get. So, you know, I think for the 0.1 second to 60 timeline difference, I think you're getting a bargain. I do know it's a car which, you know, there's not a waiting list for it, but you know, you went into the centre today and said I wanted Cayman 4-litre, you wouldn't be getting it in a couple of months' time. Put it that way. It has got a bit of a stir. Do you know what? Now we're out of lockdown, I'm back to this favourite thing of mine, being paying for the toll bridge. It caught me out. You know, the guy who owns this is Roger Whittaker. He's an absolute billionaire, lives on the Isle of Man. But he has to get 12p because he owns this bloody bridge. Sorry. It's crazy. So I do think the 4-litre engine, the 6-cylinder coming back into the car is something I just never expected Porsche to do that. I thought they went turbo and that was it. I think all the aspirated engine days were numbered. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, interesting times, but a lovely colour, lovely car, and hope you enjoyed watching that video. Again, comment away on the video, or if you'd like to see a specific car on the channel, and just let me know and we can try and get it sorted. So what's coming up on the channel? What have I got lined up to film and to record? Well, we're going electric. we're going electric. We're going fully electric, and I have driven it very briefly before, but the Porsche Taycan will be featuring on the channel on Sunday. So stay tuned for that. I really am excited to drive this car. It's going to be the 4S version. I mean, I drove the 4S after having spent a day up in the lakes driving my RS, and then they threw me the keys to the Taycan, and I took it up the Shap Road, as it's known, the Shap Road, and I was really impressed. The handling, composed of that car, it just wasn't slow. There was a few cars ahead of me, and there was an opportunity to overtake, and I just went for it, and it just gave you lots of confidence. The torque, the pickup, it's unrelenting. So hopefully we'll do that car some justice, and we'll get some great content for the Taycan. I've got to do my homework on that car because it's a new thing. I mean, I don't know. I think cars and going electric, I'm not sure, but if Porsche are anything to go by, I think they bided the time. They've bided the time well. They've timed it very well. They've let all these other EV companies, obviously Tesla's all EV, but there's been other manufacturers moving into the space, and I think they've bided the time extremely well, and I think they've come to market at the right time. People are beginning to get into the idea of it now, and so Porsche have just pounced at the right time with the Taycan launch. It's a sensational car, and I can't wait to feature that on the channel before we get a few nights next week. I think these roads are a bit bumpy. What have we got coming up as well on the channel? Well, some other cars which we will be featuring on the channel. We are going to be featuring my favourite colour, crayon again, and we'll be featuring the 911 Turbo S. Yes, we'll be putting that car on the channel in the not too distant future. I'm led to believe there will be a demonstrator which we'll be able to get hold of and test that car, and I'm very excited to again drive that car, because again that torque curve is tiring. I mean, it's just going to be quite a car to drive. It really is. So I'm looking forward to getting into that car in the not too distant future. I think we'll probably have that on the channel sometime, maybe early January. That's probably the way it's looking, I would think, but we'll see what happens. And then, I've had a lot of support from my pals, thanks very much. They've all come forward and said, yeah, we can use my car, you can, put my car on the channel. That's fantastic. So we've got some interesting cars in the mix there, GT4s, Spider, obviously. I've driven Spider before, but we've got a slightly different specification Spider we've got access to. So some 991.2 GTS, agate grey, that came on Scottish trip. That would be a lovely car to drive. So yeah, there's some interesting cars coming up. And another one of my friends, he's offered me to drive some of the classic stuff. He got 964, so I'm looking forward to having a go at that one before the 993. So just great to drive these cars and just experience them. It's just fabulous. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to film these cars? Well, Cumbria, obviously. it's picturesque. There's some great places. I mean, up there on Shap, towards Shap, places like that. It's just right on the doorstep there for Kendal. So it's great. It's great to be able to get on those roads. So, any watch questions you have? Again, going back to watches again, one of my passions. Let me know. Just drop me a line. Any questions? Any questions about what I'd recommend you do to actually get a Rolex, get into Rolex, where to buy from, things like that. I've got a bit of experience in that area, so I'll certainly give him the benefit of my wisdom when it comes to where to buy your watches. If you're going to buy a Porsche, and go to Porsche Centre Kendal. That's all I'll say. Because the family run firm will look after you and get great people. And maybe I can just finish off with a little bit of a talk around how we actually came to get this watch. Because, as I say, it'd been discontinued. I didn't think I'd be able to get one. Back in 2008, my business wasn't where we are now. So getting watches was more of a considered thing to do. It's like, well, can I afford it? Shall I do it? So this is one of the very few watches I didn't buy from Whittles. Actually, I bought it from a goldsmith store in the Trafford Centre. And I was out with one of my friends, and we're in the Trafford Centre. And I was so nerdy on watches. Still am to some extent, not as much as I used to be, but I am still a bit nerdy on them. And when I looked at the window in the Trafford Centre, I saw that the stand that would normally have had the Sea Dweller on it, I knew all the prices, and it had the price underneath it, and it wasn't on the stand. I thought, well, it's obviously been on the stand, it's not on the stand, where is it? So I went in, and I've got to know the manager there over the years, assistant manager over the years, Andy. So I got chatting to him. He says, well, one of the lads in the stores actually bought it, but I can get you another one. I said, it's got to be the V serial, the final production run. So he said, yeah, definitely get that. So I actually bought that watch. So it was a complete miracle, absolute miracle. I thought they'd gone. Now Whittle did actually end up getting another two, surprisingly enough, but I didn't actually buy this one from them. So anyway, so that's how I come to get the Sea Dweller. But I've had it so many years now, and the values have slowed off a bit, you know. But you still, I wouldn't part with this watch for less than probably, well, I wouldn't sell it, but I think it's probably, you know, 12k, something like that in the market today for me. But I don't know if you could, you know, when they come up, they don't last very long. If they're the V serial, that's the thing that sets it apart, really. So there we go. So hopefully you'll enjoy the video on the Taycan 4S. I think we will get into a turbo eventually as well, maybe a Turbo S. We'll see what happens. But I think it's a car where you're not be disappointed driving it, and all the tax breaks. It's probably worth a punt, I'd say. Worth getting into one. I've thought about it, the replacement for this, but the thing I have with this car is it's just so big. It's just so practical. It does everything. So to go to a Taycan in the Turismo lineup, you know, with the estate boot, it's sort of, well, I'm going to lose space, and I don't know. We'll have to see. I might change my mind when I've driven it. So. Driven this weekend, so there we go. Yeah, so yeah, I really appreciate all the people subscribing to the channel. It seems to be a little bit of a pickup. All the people are watching the videos. We've got over 5,000 views on now on the 997 video. Sorry, we've had over almost 6,000 views now on the RS review, and we've had getting up to 2,000 views on the 4 litre RS, which I think that's just going to keep building. I think there's lots of people like to watch that, like to see that car on the road, so that's fantastic. So thanks very much for if you watched that video. If you haven't watched the video, check it out, it's really good. I'm hoping to do just like this piece to camera, this just chat about cars, what's coming up in the future. I want to mention that GR again, that Toyota, because Chris Harris in the Top Gear video, which I recommend you watch, he actually, when he did his little piece to camera for the video for Top Gear, he does actually say that I'm busy actually driving the GR right now, the GR Yaris, but I think again for the money it's a pocket rocket car, fantastic. And one other thing I wanted to say, I did forget to say it, it's in my notes, but you know, driving and glancing at notes is probably not the best thing in the world to do, is
speed camera reported ahead.
Okay, I'm not going that way. If you want to get a good understanding of the Sea Dweller, the lovely, nice production, it goes through all the watches. Something I recommend that you subscribe to another great channel is called Hodinkee, Hodkinee, Hodink, Hodkin, I think it is, Hodinkee. Anyway, they do a reference point series, and they've got a little video. It's only about 8.5 minutes long, but it talks all about the Sea Dwellers, and that's where this watch is covered off along with all the other ones. And one thing I did forget to say is the James Cameron. Let's talk about that. Last little stint before Costco. In 2014, Rolex, they brought the 4000 Sea Dweller back in the 40mm case. What they also did, they also brought in the James Cameron dial, or the D Blue dial, on the Deep Sea. Now, I've tried that Deep Sea watch on numerous times, it's just not quite done it for me, I'll be honest. However, they do go for more money in the secondary market, and they are more sought after, but I just want to throw something into the mix here, because it's called the James Cameron because James Cameron actually wore a Deep Sea when he went down the Mariana Trench in that vessel, in that green Submariner, to withstand all that depth, that super duper submarine, excuse me. And now, the watch he actually wore when he did that expedition was actually the Deep Sea reference 11660. That's the watch he wore with a black dial, the standard watch. And the rumour is, and I've heard it before, I don't know how true it is, but you know, it's possible, it was a bit of a Marmite watch. It wasn't really selling like hotcakes. So what Rolex did, they decided in 2014 to bring out this deep blue dial. Now the deep blue dial was a commemoration watch, but he didn't wear that watch when he went in the submarine. He actually wore the deep sea with the black dial. So I've been tempted over the years, still am to some extent, to think, well, I'll get a deep blue, you know, because I know sometimes I look at things, I really want one, and I think, oh no, I'm not so sure. But it isn't actually the watch he wore. So I think the original deep sea, because I've got the one of the very, very first ones, kind of like sits well with me, and it's got the colour scheme I like. So for me, I think I'll probably stick with it. So anyway, I was going to see you next time, but carried on. But we're almost at Costco now. Yeah, so that's a bit of a chin wag on some things, cars, some videos to go and watch and see, some cars that will coming up on the channel. I'm excited to try the Taycan. A little bit about this fabulous Sea Dweller, the Sea Dweller range with the Sea Dweller range with Rolex. I get Rolex and Porsche mixed up because I love the brands, both brands so much. But yeah, it's a bit of a ramble through them because for me, you can't go wrong with a Sea Dweller. Just a great watch. I absolutely love wearing mine. I think next week, as it gets darker soon, I'm going to set off a bit earlier. So yeah, any questions, any comments, put on the Instagram, put on the comments of this video. Anything you'd like to see, any watch you'd like me to review, any questions on Rolexes. You know, how would you get a Rolex steel watch these days that's in the sports line? I don't know. Say your prayers, I think, really. It's very difficult. We just talk about that. I mean, if you're a dealer, dealers get a lot of bashing. You know, Rolex dealers get a lot of bashing. I suppose if I was wanted to buy some nice watches from a dealer and I felt I had the means to do so and I wanted to get this watch and it wasn't happening for me, I'd perhaps feel a bit disappointed too. But what you've got to look at is you've got to look at another side of the argument, is that these Rolex dealers, you know, they've got staff to pay, they've got the lights to put on, you know, they've got pensions to pay, you know, they've got stock to buy, not just Rolex watches, and they've got to make money. It's the only thing that keeps them going. So it shouldn't be a surprise if they're going to have preferred customers that maybe haven't spent the most in shop over the years, but certainly, you know, the regular spenders, they spent a lot. Then those are the customers you're going to look after. What would you do? I mean, are you going to just go and offer a really, really hard to get watch to someone you've never met before that you can just supply in a few months' time, the next one comes in? I mean, come on, they're not going to do that, are they? But if you get to know them and you buy a few things from them and you can see you're genuine and you like the brand, then, you know, you've got more of a chance. So I think that's the way to do it. Well, I have arrived at Costco for another week of supplies. I really appreciate you watching today's video. Got a few false endings, never mind false starts. But yeah, I hope you've got some out of today's video. There will be another one along next week. Get your questions for me. I'll review another little watch from the collection. Send this one back to the bank. Thanks for your support on the channel, really does mean a lot. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.